Welcome back to the Trailkings podcast. This is episode 6, where we talk about what is better to stay in, cabins or campers. Stick around to the end and we're going to give you our thoughts on our preference and why that is our preference. The reason why this is a podcast topic is because we've had many conversations about it. We both have different preferences, and we did the same thing on our last trip.
Right.
And so, preferences. Mine has always been cabins. Now, I have a camper. We went and bought a camper to pull it, thinking that'd be easy, right? It's all stays loaded down. You got the toy hauler, you load it up, and then you're there. The problem is, in my family, we have more than one side-by-side, and everybody's wanting to drive now. Now, I've always loved pulling our 30-foot deck over more than a camper. It's just more nimble. It's a dual axle versus a triple axle. I can whip in and out of places much more easier. There's a story like when we go on trips, especially the far away ones, we always stay in a hotel. And so when you have a camper, yeah, you can find a parking lot and possibly stay in that if it's legal in that state. But I'll never forget, I had the deck over. I pull in a hotel to stay there, and there's only one road in, one road out. And we're early, it's like 3:34, but we've been driving early that morning. And so at that moment, you got a 30-foot trailer. You're like, what the heck am I going to do? I can back out the 150 yards and just pull it in on the skinny road. Like, they could at least gave me a sign or something warning me.
Tell you ahead of time.
So, but because that trailer's so nimble, I was able to go to the back of the parking lot. And it still wasn't like a big open area. I mean, it had enough to come in and then park, pull in off to your right and still be like vertical parking. And so, you had the lines for your right side parking, your lines for your left side parking, if you can imagine that, and then in the middle. So I literally had to go towards the back and cut it sharp. I've never had the trailer that close to the truck before.
You're looking at it, touch your side mirror, yeah.
I could touch it outside the window if I wanted to.
Yeah. No, it's so you got turned around, I'm assuming.
That got turned around, and then so ever since then, that has been a big reason. And there's other reasons I'll get into, but that has been a big reason for us on why we like to do cabins, having that deck over
Instead of a camper.
Yeah.
So our experience is, I've just been fortunate enough that somebody in my family had a motorhome or something that we could use. So it's easy to say that our preference is to have a motorhome or camper when you don't have to pay for it. So I'll start with that. So that's real easy, right? Take some of the cons out of the equation. But so we love that. We love being able to go. Every time, for example, we've gone to Tennessee, there's a Walmart a couple hours out that we can stop, or some kind of store. We can stop a couple hours out. You sleep in the parking lot. Everything's right there. You got all your food in the fridge already. You don't have to go to the grocery store when you get there. You don't have to take a big cooler or whatever to put your food in. So that's really our preference. If I could choose, I said, but at the same time, I haven't had to buy a motorhome or a camper to use it. Now, with our experience, we've had several things that go wrong, right? Toilet stopped working. So the toilet stopped working.
That was in Windrock? No, that was your ACs.
No, that was AC. But in, was it Mina? Or Mulberry? It was Mulberry.
It was Mulberry.
We drove all the way up, and the toilet stopped working like a decent amount of ways before we got there.
That's a bad experience, right?
It's one of those things where if you're in a cabin, you just call up and say, hey, the toilet's not working, but you're in a motorhome, you got to figure out why it's not working. And the only reason you know it's not working is somebody's used the bathroom in the toilet. And so now you've got to figure out a solution to take care of that problem. And so, the convenience is really, to me, really high in terms of what the preference is of having all your stuff in there. Everything's packed up. You got your groceries. You're good to go. The kids can sleep on the couches. I mean, it's super convenient. But you know, when you've got something like a motorhome and then a 28-foot trailer, in your situation, you're stuck. There's not much option other than to back all the way back out.
Well, and another benefit that you talked about before with RVs is they can all ride together. You know, we're limited. We have a 6-seater truck. Our F-450 can fit 6 people, and that's our family. We can't bring any other friends or anything like that. I think a plus for an RV, you know, if you're going that route, is that you can fit more than 6 people in that thing.
Well, you can, and not only can you fit it, you can go on a 13-hour drive and your kids aren't in a seatbelt for 13 hours stuck. You know, I guess they have some seatbelts on there, but you know, in the couches you don't. But the other thing too is, you know, it's expensive to drive something like that. However, when you can put 3 families in there and travel, you're splitting fuel 3 ways, and when you get to where you're going, sometimes you have a hotel. But in this example, just for a family to go, in terms of having one cabin or a motorhome, it is a little pricier to go with fuel and stuff. So that's another downside, but it's still my overall preference. It sounds like a lot of negatives, but it's just, if you travel in a motorhome, then you realize what a huge benefit that part is.
It all depends on your group and what your group likes to travel. Like for us, was it 18 or 19? We went to Brimstone, Tennessee, and they stayed in the RV. We got a cabin. Now, for me, that wasn't the fun experience, but the fun experience for our family on that trip, and why that I lean more to the deck over, it was staying in that cabin. That cabin was so unique. It was on stilts. It was right by a running river. When it snowed out the next day, you're covered in snow. I mean, it was like an iconic scene, just, you know, snowfall, you're kind of up elevated, you know, a rustic cabin that had like a little crawl through hole. You know, we get those unique experiences booking these, you know, cabins when we go to places that we necessarily won't get if you're just staying in a camper or RV that you own and that you always stay in.
I'll challenge that though, because that park was different, right? Because we thought it'd be closer. We were 20 minutes apart with no cell service. That made it a little difficult. But on the campground, in this beautiful motorhome, there's water nearby. There's still snow on the ground, and it was still beautiful. But you're right, that cabin was really cool. Like it was something that you would see like in a magazine advertising a place you should come take a vacation. And you don't see RV sites as one of those necessarily.
No, look at some gravel on the ground. Here's where your tires
There's your hookup for your sewer. No, that's true.
But going back to where it all depends what your group, you know, at the time, we brought more than one machine. That's why we didn't bring our camper. We just had the camper, so it was new to us and we were still wanting to use it, but we wanted to bring more than one machine. So that's the reason why we couldn't bring the camper. But we were far away, and that's where it begins. Like, well, how does your group ride? Does everybody have campers? Well, if everybody has campers, it's probably the route I'd lead. But he doesn't. And now we're starting to stay in cabins. And he's starting to get more than one machine because now his kids has a Rzr. Now, both his kid machine and his adult machine can still fit in a normal trailer. You know, I have 2 adult machines, 3 kid machines. I'm not sticking that in a 28-foot trailer. You know, that's just the reality of the situation. So I think it all boils down to what works for each individual family. And then, you know, you got to make your decision from there. You know, our 30-foot deck over, it's 25 foot on the deck, 5 foot on the dove, but we've just been able to customize it. We put a big, I think a 3-foot wide by the width of the trailer long, and then the height of the neck tall. We put 10 of those, you know, yellow top storage bins in there to pack all of our stuff.
It's waterproof.
Waterproof at that moment. Like, with all locks, we have vents on it. And so before taking a trailer, that's your concern, right? Where are you going to put all your stuff? Because if it's a gooseneck, you can't put your bed cover down. And on that trip, we had a little box and some stuff in the side-by-side, and it got wet because it rained on us before we got to the hotel. And so, but once we put that box on there, and we had that box custom built, it's changed everything. It's made traveling anywhere super efficient for us to unpack and reload when we're there.
You get there and it's just, you attack it in an hour.
We're just pulling the 10 bins out, and setting them in the rooms that they go in, either the kitchen or bedrooms, unpack the clothes, unpack the food, put the 10 bins back. And we're not just pulling out bags and bags of stuff, which it doesn't seem like there's a big distinction between the two. But for us and people that see us unload, I mean, it goes fairly quickly for,
I mean, we have less people and you think less stuff. And when we load stuff, you guys are done enough, and they're like, "How is this possible? This doesn't make any sense." And that's what it is. Everything goes in the bin. You throw it in the trailer, close the door, and you're done. So that is convenient.
And when we unpack on the home, we use one of the bins as our dirty hamper, essentially, and that bin goes directly to the utility room when we get home for washing clothes, and the one goes in the kitchen to unpack. And so when we get back, even though if it's late or we're exhausted, we can still fully unpack everything. And be done with the trip. There's nothing worse from getting back to your trip and that trip sticks around for another week or so because
you get stuff by your front doors, or you just put it in there, you're tired.
Because you just never unpacked, and then you're going, 2 weeks, a month later, he still hasn't washed his machine from West Virginia.
That was unnecessary. He said something about it being outside. I said, "Well, I got enough mud on it. I don't think the sun's touching it. It's all going to be faded and stained at this point."
Exactly.
So
it's going to be faded with like little memories of mud spots over where the mud was. That's protecting it. So
and we ran into a similar problem, or not similar problem, but showing how that convenient it is for you. When we bought the Rzr 200 on the last trip, we had to put the four-wheelers in the bed of the truck, and then it came down to where do I put all my stuff. Everyth's going to get wet if it rains, and it's on a 13-hour drive, probably going to rain. And so it is nice having that set up.
Well, that's our take on if it's, you should lean going cabins, or if you should look at buying a camper. They are expensive. If you're new to the hobby, I would stick with cabins. Don't get so invested in, thinking you have to have the big camper. Now, if you go the cabins route, you got to plan ahead. We're booking 6 months to a year and ahead of a lot of our trips. We'll book out as far as they will let us book out. And so that's something you have to keep in mind if you are going the cabin route. We appreciate you listening to the Trail Kings podcast. Until next time, stay safe on the trail.